What's going on? Doombots, Tony Scangili back in 2022 with a couple of videos that I thought might help you out. The first, we're just going to kind of look at from a perspective of building your roster. A lot of things have changed over the last year or so. ISOs, blue ISOs, harder raids, power creep, yada yada yada. Basically, though, the amount of orange gear we've been getting is a little bit more than we were, not quite as much as we'd like. So it's still a bottleneck for most players in the game. Not even kind of talking about teal gear yet, which we'll get to maybe in about a month from now when it becomes more available. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But right now I want to keep you guys from wasting resources. And the best way I can do that right now is to give you kind of a priority list. I've spent some time, I've talked with some people, we've looked at our rosters and what we needed to do. And I've come up with roughly 40 characters that you should be putting orange gear into. And I will go through and explain why I've made these decisions with a couple of honorable mentions. Again, disclaimer, this is not about the only characters you should ever invest in. That's not fun. We want to have fun, right? This is just these characters kind of go a little bit further than most. So if you are kind of in a point in your roster like, I don't know who to work on, or there's so many things, where do I start with? This is kind of what the purpose of this video is, just to get you like, oh, well, maybe this is a better idea. So starting off, these are in pseudo order, if that makes sense. They're kind of in order, but not, you know, like Kestrel's not number one on the list. It's just, think of it like buckets. Like there's bucket 1, bucket 2, bucket 3, and they all have value in the game. Let's talk about why. So we'll start with bucket 1. Bucket 1 is, for my money, the best 5 characters in the game. You'll notice Dormammu's not here because you don't have Dormammu. Why? Because you're watching a video. That's how I know that. There's like, at the time of this video, there's 8 people, maybe 7 people with Dormammu. You're not one of them. When you get Dormammu, we can start worrying about putting gear into him. But realistically, if you got Dormammu already, and by the time you get Dormammu, it's not going to be a hard time putting gear into him, so let's not even talk about him. We have Kestrel, Doctor Doom, Cersei, Icarus, and Captain America Sam. These characters kind of represent, with the exception of Doom, the vast power creep of 2021. Kestrel came out, or maybe early quarter 2 of last year, for the anniversary, has been an absolute bombshell. Hasn't changed, kind of changed how we view characters going forward. And she still holds up. She's still not only required, for the most part, for a good chunk of the endgame raids, she holds her own in war. She's great in the new game modes like Tower. She'll probably be great in additional game modes like Grand Arena. She just kind of has a kit that makes you have to work around, so the more gear you put into her, the more you're going to get out of her. Obviously, don't ever regret anything you put in. Plus, the added benefit her and Doom both share is their split types, so it only takes half as much of each type of gear to bring them up. That can be a consideration. So when you're looking at which characters on your roster to start worrying about whether I get them to 13, 14, 15, etc., these are them. These represent the top 5. Now, if you've already done them, we can move on to bucket 2. Icarus and Cersei kind of showed up in the tail end of last year, completely demolished the way most of the game is played. Arena matches are now rocks, paper, scissors matchups where whoever wins the coin flip might be going first. Defenses are all about figuring out how to keep them alive or how to go first, etc., etc. RTA, if these guys are available, you're done. Raids, we were really happy when they gave us the new Warriors raid team for Doom raids, and then they gave us these two and the new Warriors. Still great, but kind of overpowered a little bit. So these 2 characters also being Mystics definitely take priority gear. They're also great options for any Dark Dimensions you might be wanting to go into due to their tagging and just their raw stats. Phenomenal characters. You want these guys on the top of your list. Finally, we have Cap Sam. There's like almost nothing he can't do. Just from his survivability, he does decent damage, great control, everything you want in a tank and more. In addition to the fact that you quite literally cannot do Doom raids without him. You can probably squeak by some of the earliest Doom raids without him, because we've done it before, but as you get harder and harder, there is no 5-character team without Cap Sam that's going to get anything even close to successful without using dramatic amounts of raid heals. So, as far as the first 5 are concerned, I do think these are generally the best characters in the game. We can move on to the next bucket. Here we have Jubilee, Omega Red, and the New Warriors. This is where we get a little bit more questionable about why certain characters are in certain orders, and I'll try to explain. Jubilee and Omega Red are basically the absolute best 2 options you can have going into any Dark Dimension legendary requirement. And if they're not legendary, you can use them in global, and they're also the best options you can have, combined with, you know, Cap Sam and Dr. Doom, etc., etc. So they already are great. On their independent teams, when you look at them together, their team fundamentally doesn't exist without them. Useful in plenty of game modes, damn near required in some others. You can't really look better to spend mutant gear than them. So, moving into them, not even kind of worth a conversation. Again, this is not in order. It's not Jubilee and then Omega Red. There's just the bucket of them. And then we have the New Warriors. Kind of the same thing. As I just said, the New Warriors were a little bit overshadowed by Cersei and Icarus as far as mystics are concerned. That's true. But Deathpool on her own makes those 2 look insane. She's also pretty much amazing in any raids you use her in. Good in Dark Dimension, good outside of it. The same goes for Cloak and Dagger. Independently, absolutely terrible. You're not going to get much value out of any independent use of those characters. Together, they've trivialized most of the city content in Dark Dimension. They've trivialized any raids that they've able to be used in, going into Doom raids, etc. They're just all around amazing. That's why it was so hard to get them. They are a powerhouse couple. Well, team. They work really well together. So, moving on next, after you've gotten through Cersei and Icarus, if you've gotten all your Mystic gear out of the way, these 3 characters, dependent on your, you know, uniques and everything, are probably the next best way to put your mutant gear in. Doesn't mean that they're necessarily better than some of the bio options, but your mileage may vary. Moving to bucket 3, we have the remainder of the Secret Avengers. Independently, they're not amazing, but when you throw them in with Sam, they become pretty much the 3-piece set that walks over the hardest raids in the game. War, reasonable, especially when paired with Kestrel. Non-Doom raids, still incredibly good. Anywhere you have to use a shield character, Maria Hill just subs in perfectly. Dark Dimension, you're seeing a lot more and more of these characters being used in Dark Dimension. 1, because they're good everywhere else, and that's great use for your resources. And 2, they actually do provide some amount of resource. Between Maria Hill summoning, an ability block, and a stun on Sharon Carter. Totally reasonable. And then the last skill character on that pool is Shang-Chi. He kind of is the unofficial 5th on the Secret Avengers team. 3 Secret Avengers, Castro, and Shang-Chi. What he offers is pure damage and insane speed, and the ability to trigger a lot of attacks, even though he's not directly targeting the person he wants to hit because of so much AoE. Just a good investment. Now, he's probably about the 4th skill character on this list, if you count Kestrel as half skill, to get those gear and resources. But after him, there's not many other skill characters as we go through this. So you'll see that most of the skill characters are the best in the game, just because of last year being the year of skill and mystics. Every year is the year of mutants, so we're not even talking about that. But skill and mystics, that represented a lot. You also notice a significantly less large portion of tech and bio characters. That's because the tech and bio characters just started coming out now. Back to that tech character, we still have Doc Ock. He's still one of the best uses of tech gear in the game after Kestro and Doom. He's losing a little bit more value as time goes on. I just want to remind everybody that there will be a tech team for Doom Raid soon. So if you're just working really hard on those tech characters to get through the Doom Raid, just remember that a new team is coming out soon, and you're probably going to want to save some gear for them because they're just going to be better. We'll talk about more of how that kind of logic works when we look at the Web Warriors. Doc Ock still is one of the best Dark Dimension options, phenomenal in war on offense and defense. Even if you're not using his Sinister Six team on defense, he still is a pretty decent flush character, but offensively, great slot character. Not so much value in Arena as he used to have, but your mileage may vary. Any raid, since most of the raids have that Spider-Verse or Sinister Six tag, kind of just walks right into if you don't have some of the other value up there. Should be okay. Shouldn't really worry. And again, there's not a lot of tech characters on this list, so you make do with what you can. He's definitely good enough, at least from a Dark Dimension perspective, to justify the orange gear. Adam Warlock is still very high on this list. His team has fallen a little bit from the best team in the game to maybe the second or third best team in the game, but the amount of things they can do outside of like Arena has not changed. They're still phenomenal war offense. They still require a specific war defense team to beat if you have them on defense. They're still great in any raid you can use them, in a cosmic raid or any combination raid like that. They're even pretty viable as mishmash characters if you start breaking them apart. So that's as far as the team is concerned. He still is a reasonable Dark Dimension character, a reasonable RTA character if you're interested in RTA, and it's probably going to translate into the Grand Tournament when that comes out. A reasonable 5th character in Arena if you're doing some kind of hybrid team. All in all, still very reasonable. The downside he has is Miasma Mystic, right? It's the double M's, the Miasma Mystic character. There's so many characters that need Miasma and so many that really need it as opposed to him. He's going down in value, but he still has it right now. So he's still a pretty decent investment. Keep track as we go through next month's version of this or next patch's version to see if he's fallen from like a higher priority bucket to a little bit lower. Like Silver Surfer. Going into bucket 4, we have a little bit more of a change. A little bit more of shoring up certain teams and starting to interact with others. Surfer used to be one of the best characters in the game. He technically still is in raw stats and what he does. It's just the places where he was absolutely amazing, there are better options now. For Mystic raids or anything with the Mystic tag, we have at least 6 characters, 7 characters that are just a little bit better than him. So he could be a slot fill if you don't have Cloak and Dagger. He could be the last character if you don't have Adam Warlock. He doesn't exactly replace them, but he gets a lot of value. Arena, offensively, I've seen a couple of hybrid teams on offense, but that's offense. Use what you got. Not much in terms of raids outside of filler, but his raw power still gives him that edge. He's still kind of a threat in war on either side. If you see him, you kind of have to plan accordingly. So he's still a reasonable investment. But again, please just notice the number of Mystic characters ahead of him are so high that even if you see him in this bucket 4 and you go, wow, I should work on Surfer. Yeah, like after Cersei, after Icarus, after, like he's not quite high. And if I were to do this as like a Mystic thing, which I might do now that I think about it, you'd see like he's a little bit lower on the Mystic priority sheet than you would expect. Then we have 2 parts of 2 separate teams. We have the remainder of the mutant team in Bishop and Beast. Granted, they're not the only 2 characters. They're just the 2 highest priority characters for people who are just trying to get into Doom Raid. You really want to make sure that Bishop and Beast are ready to go and as high investment as possible, because Kitty and Iceman can lag a little bit behind for what it's worth. Not too long, but in order for you to at least make some attempts in on the fight. So these are the 2 highest priority. That team is still the absolute best team, with one exception, and that exception is the boss node and harder Doom Raids. You really want Omega Red in instead of Kitty, but that's a different story for another time. So that's where these guys come in, plus after you gotten Jubilee and Omega Red done, your mutant gear might open up a little bit. That's where it's going to want to go. For now, next patch, that might change. Then we have the new Web Warriors. So, cool thing about the Web Warriors is they're absolutely an amazing offensive war team. I'm sorry, raid team. War team, offensive war team, they're actually not terrible as far as using them. They don't really beat anything of consequence, but they can just beat high-powered nothing teams. Like somehow, if you come across like an 800k Guardians of the Galaxy, the Web Warriors kit and power can compete with them in reasonable fights. As far as a raid team goes, they are about 30% better than the symbiotes. They're a little bit faster, take a little bit less gear. Their base stats are a little bit higher. And these two are the two most important characters on that team. The higher the investment in these characters, the more your team will find success as you bring up the rest. So you want to get these guys as high up as you can before you start worrying. Don't try to bring up the entire team at the same time, like 13, 13, 13, 13, 14, 14. You don't try to do that. They all take the same gear except Ghost Spider, but they all take the same bio pieces. It's going to be hard. You will be able to mix and match this team to get some value if you're currently doing, you know, like reasonably success bio fights with the symbiotes or whatever. That should be okay. But these two are the guys that take over for the symbiotes. So you want, this is like the symbiote Spider-Man and the anti-venom of that team. You want to make sure you have those guys as strong as possible for moving on to the next ones. That's pretty much it for Bucket 4. Now we're moving into the second tier of characters. Keep in mind, the entire point of this is to show who's worth your priority orange gear. You know, where to spend them and why and how. And this will change every patch almost, because new characters come out. You know, if new mutants come out and they're a better raid team, they might take more gear away. Notice that there's not a lot of Weapon X team members on this. It's because that they're a great option after you've, you know, got your business in order as far as raids and war, you know, X-Men stuff is done. So, for what it's worth, it's not to say these characters aren't great or good, it's just that their usability is on the decline, or most likely to be. And that's where we have Iceman. He's the next member of the Astonishing X-Men you should worry about bringing up. Again, my general rule, if they can do what they need to do, don't invest in them. If they're having a hard time with it, that's when you put a little bit more. And then the entire rest of the Infinity Watch team is here. No particular order. I use Nebula in Doom Raids because there's no tech team. I used to use Gamora and Moondragon because there wasn't the Secret Avengers team, or there wasn't Shang-Chi at the time. You know, like, some of these characters had investment because they were good and they were the best arena team. Now they're not the best arena team, but they are a pretty okay one. And now they're not quite as beneficial across the board in the game, but they still are beneficial. For all the same reasons that Adam Warlock is still good, all of these characters are still reasonable. I still, to this day, use Phi Lavelle as the 5th member of my symbiotes for Doom Raids because she's just a little bit better than Venom is, and I don't want to work on Venom, but that's just me. I still can use Gamora as a 5th on the skill teams. I don't really use Moondragon, but I know a lot of people do. These characters aren't useless now, it's just they're being pushed out by better characters. So if you already have them, that's great. They're on the decline, so you may want to think twice about investing in them, but right now, if you need to be stronger today, these guys will still help you out. Moving to Bucket 6, we have Lady Deathstrike. She is, again, the unofficial best 5th character for the tech raids. That's not to say she's good. It's just to say that the tech raids are super hard. We don't have a team like the New Warriors yet. We're going to have to get through it somehow. She's the best option for that. Your mileage may vary. If you want to save your resources and wait for the tech team to come out in a month or two, or however long after this video, by all means do so. If you just need to get it done today because your alliance is pushing harder and harder and you don't want to spend resources or raid heals, she'll get it done. As far as war is concerned, she's got a little bit of value there. That's where kind of where her value falls down. I haven't really seen her successful in many other game modes. But if you got her, use her. The rest of the Web Warriors and Kitty Pryde are in this pool for the same reason. Kitty Pryde is not as high priority as far as mutants are concerned as the rest of them. She can actually lag behind pretty far depending on where you're using them. And she gets replaced by Omega Red. And she can actually be replaced by Omega Red the entire time. Like, you don't actually have to use her on that team if you have Omega Red. So she's a little bit less valuable, but for things like war, for things, for some of the earlier fights, she still does her job. She's just kind of the worst character on her team. No problem with that investment as your mutants are going up. Then we also have the rest of the Web Warriors. These, again, not in any particular order, but the stronger they are, the better they are. Personally, I think Spider-Man is the best of the remaining three. Miles and Spider-Punk are roughly even in terms of power. Miles does the most damage. Spider-Punk gives you the most control. Again, your mileage may vary. Also, they're brand new. You might not have Spider-Punk. You know, like, let's not worry about getting them and moving on to them if you don't have them yet. But by the time this video ends, the most people who will have them, you know, you'll have them. Anyone else who doesn't have them, there's going to be in the waiting room for until they become farmable, either 17 days or 9 months from now, and no middle ground, depending on whether you believe they're a legendary unlock or not. I personally don't. Now we're moving to the characters that are, you're going to be like, why, Tony? This is stupid. Why would Winter Soldier be there? Well, because you need to have orange gear in Winter Soldier to get Omega Red. Now, not to unlock him. Keep in mind, Nick Fury, Shatterstar, Longshot, and if you go over to the bucket 8, we can kind of keep 7 and 8 together. Polaris. These characters are required to be at Gear Tier 14 for the 7-star unlock. They're part of the Mythic Legendaries. So Adam Warlock requires the X Factor in Jubilee. Jubilee shouldn't be a problem getting up to high gear, but the rest of the X Factor, that's up to you. Now, their value is going down. That said, Shatterstar and Longshot are still a great pair, and they're still useful in a couple of different game modes, and they're still kind of fun to play with. So if you did invest in them already, that's great. If you haven't, I just ask, maybe take some time to think how important that high Adam Warlock is to you, knowing just the fact that he's going down in value almost every week. And he kind of did everything he needed to at 5 or 6 star. So if you really can afford to save that mutant gear until such a time as the gear becomes way more prevalent, or if you don't think for some reason that more mutants are coming out, there's going to be your option. I think that's the best place to save gear right now. If you've already invested in them, power to you, they're still useful. Just be aware that, as always, there will always be more mutants. There will always need more gear, and Adam Warlock, the legendary unlock, after getting him, which they only need to be Gear Tier 12 to unlock, you're kind of paying a really high tax in both gear and ISOs to get him higher. Let that decision go up, you know, on your own. The same thing kind of can be said about Omega Red. The only difference is Omega Red is absolutely hands down better than Adam Warlock on his own end with his team as far as, you know, war is concerned. And 3 of the characters used to unlock him are the best at what they do right now. So instead of worrying about, you know, working on 4 characters to get Adam Warlock, you're working on 2 additional characters, Nick Fury and Winter Soldier. Questionable value, I know, but that what they give you is definitely worth a little bit more. So, and that's the same for any legendary in the future. Always just kind of use your own discretion on how high you need to get them and whether or not they're worth the bio and skill gear that those 2 characters are worth in order to get the highest value out of them. That's why they're on this list. They're not good particularly at anything. You can use them, except Winter Soldier is completely useless. Your mileage may vary. Ebony Maw, he's almost off the list. He just still offers some of the best value you can wherever he's going. If you don't have characters, he's like one of the better 5th options if you need to fill out a Mystic team. The Black Order is still a reasonable team, and they need him to get value out of him, but there is no requirement as far as Orange Gear is concerned. I know personally of many people who still use Ebony Maw in the lower Doom raids just because they already had investment in him. He can still work, but his value is falling completely. I imagine whoever the next legendary is probably going to kick him completely off the map. We'll see. Drop down into that honorable mention category later. And then we have Anti-Venom, Symbiote Spider-Man, and Shuri. Shuri is a holdover from the old days of a lot of people have had her for a very long time and have invested a lot in her. So that little bit more is the difference between her being used in Doom raids and not, especially the higher 2s, 2.2 and higher. Is she worth the resource? Not particularly, no. And I don't think anyone's going to agree. But because tech is such a nightmare right now, and because she is a pretty decent raid character all around, the investment in her is not going to kill you. Spider-Man, Symbiote Spider-Man, and Anti-Venom, they are still as good as they ever have been. The game hasn't changed to make them worse. As a matter of fact, they're still pretty good in Doom 2. But their team is a little bit slow, and now you have to still think about the other two characters. Most of the Dark Dimension 5 players who, ran through it quickly had at least Symbiote Spider-Man or both of them for the city nodes. They pair really well with Cloak and Dagger for that stuff. They still have the good value that they had before. The downside is you're not getting that value out of Carnage, Venom, and Scream that you used to, so they're almost off the list. If you currently have them and you need them for something because you don't have the symbiotes you need to get through, or the Web Warriors, you're fine. Trust me. They'll be okay. I've used them for a very long time. They're fine. They're just not the new hotness. They're not the jingly keys. They're not the, ooh, look at me. And they've been outgrown. Like, we've outgrown them. They're still cool. They're still fun. Everything they used to do, they can still do. There's just better options now. So keep them on the down low. Figure it out. And same thing with Polaris and Multiple Man. That's the same from the conversation before. Now we move to honorable mentions. These are the characters that didn't make the top 40. But if I did top 50, they'd probably be here. And these get a little bit more... You could if you want to. So we have Phoenix and, Magic. Magic's release has kind of revitalized the Uncanny X-Men team. For that purpose, having a strong Phoenix is good, and having a strong Magic is good because when she summons Phoenix, it's based on her stats. If you are to take advantage of this team for war, and pretty much that's it, there you go. Additionally, Phoenix is still an amazing character in Dark Dimension. Most people had some degree of investment in her. I think she's easier to unlock now. You don't have to feel bad about that investment. She'll still get some value out of it. You just won't get as much as the rest of the mutants right now, or foreseeable future, probably not much there either. Same thing with Magic. Magic only after Phoenix. Like, you can't invest in Magic and not have Phoenix. That's kind of a waste of all resources. But if you're trying to take advantage of Phoenix, you can get a little bit more out of her by putting some orange gear into Magic as well. At least gives you a second decent Phoenix as opposed to some garbage, terrible spawn Phoenix. Same rules apply. Whatever tier 4s you have in Phoenix, Dark Phoenix gets. Whatever tier 4s you have in Magic, her summoned version of Dark Phoenix gets those. Weird, but we'll see. And she might even go up in the future if she's necessary for something as it goes on, but she's an honorable mention right now. Emma, just from a perspective of the fact that she's still good in RTA, still good in Arena, and kind of not a terrible character all around. She still has that game-breaking minus 10% speed. And most people have some degree of investment in her anyway. If you do, or if you're on the cusp about what to do, she's a great fill slot character, and it's very likely that she's not going anywhere for the while. That's the same with Sinister. If you've already invested in Sinister, it's okay to put a little bit more into him, but he's not countered. People will always say, like, oh, he's dead since Kestrel. Like, it's not Kestrel, it's his speed that killed him. Too many things are way faster than what he's doing, and what he's doing, which used to be amazing, isn't anymore. He's still fine in Dark Dimension. Anywhere you would, if you've used him in previous Dark Dimensions, you could put more into him, use him in there, he'll be fine. He's still absolutely fine in, you know, in war, especially offensively. He's still fine in raids where you can use him. You know, you could still do that trick in Doom 1 where you clone a long shot with a long shot. So he still has utility, but he's nowhere near as powerful as he used to be because the game changed around him. You got to take a step back on that one. Then we get to some more suspect options. Now, Colleen Wing and Misty Knight, basically Gamma, right? If you need to go up the middle lanes in Gamma, the more investment you have in Colleen and Misty, the easier those middle lanes are going to be. The added benefit, the war defense team gets stronger and requires a more specific version of a team to get. They're all easily farmable now, Shang-Chi, everybody. So newer players are definitely going to have access to these characters way earlier, and since there's not many counters to this team, new war is going to be an absolute nightmare for new players, so I don't know how that's going to work out. But these guys, if depending on how early you are in the game, you could feel free to strap the, you know, the rocket to these guys and move them up as you want. Ghost is still that honorable mention. She's still really good at the one thing she was ever good at, and that's it. Like, she's still really good in Dark Dimension. Whether you care about that or not, that's up to you. The benefit she has is she takes tech gear, and if you look at the rest of this list, there's maybe 3 tech characters. She's not quite great in Doom Raid, but if you already have an investment in her, you could try her. I haven't seen much success with her, but your mileage may vary. She still is an okay investment. Like, don't feel like you've wasted resources on her. Plus, you unlock Jubilee based exclusively on the strength of your Ghost, so you don't have to work on the rest of your idiot characters, which is why we have Mystic Raids, because Ghost was soloing the 7-star Jubilee mission, and the other guys had no investment, and it didn't matter, because that's how strong she was. She's okay, don't feel bad about it. If you're looking for something to put your tech gear into, if you're trying to finish up that Dark Dimension 4 or whatever, she's a fine option. I wouldn't recommend her, but don't feel bad. Then we have, on the right side, I'm going to skip the Ravager for a second, we have Minerva and Zemo. Same rules apply. Minerva, still okay in tech raids because we don't have a tech option, but not great. Still okay in Dark Dimension. She still has a res. Like, I have to remind people, like, she still has an on-command res. Reasonable. Like, very good. She still has a percentage health steal. Like, she's still a good character. Just, if she wasn't anything other than tech, we wouldn't be talking about her because tech is so bleh. She's okay, but just remember, we got to be getting a tech team sooner or later. The last we have is Zemo. Zemo does everything he needs to do in the opening turn of a game. Whether it's clear buffs, go faster, apply slows to Icarus and Cersei in Arena or RTA, he still is a reasonable character overall. He still does what everything he was good at, he still does. The only thing he doesn't do anymore is immediately kill people with his passive, because things have scaled past that, and, you know, other teams exist. That said, he's skill, so it's really hard to use that skill gear, but if you already have a high investment in him, it's okay to spend a little bit more. I'd be pumping the brakes on him. That's why he's an honorable mention. The last I'm putting here is the Ravager team. There's a lot of hype about their rework and where you're going to use them and their tech, and they're probably better options for the tech team. If this is only said by people who haven't played this game for a long time, because all you have to do is go back in time and recognize that they do something called gear traps. They will introduce characters or rework characters that require gear of a specific type, so you can spend it, so you can have the value, and then when the amazing characters that require that gear come out, for example, the Shadowlands team, introducing some more mystics, and then good mystic raid characters came out, you know? This is part of that trap. Now, most of the Ravagers, I think it's tech, bio, mystic. So a lot of people are like, well, you know, Yondu's rework made him insane. Like, really? Is he the mystic character you're going to be putting a lot of gear into? You know, the tech characters. Yeah, it's very low investment, right? Very low cost to put gear into Ravager Stitcher. He's basically free. And he's got some pretty good Dark Dimension value. So he's a great option. All of the Ravagers are good options for gear. Just remember, they're not the tech team. They're just Lady Deathstrike. They're just Shuri. They're just Minerva. They're the best option you have right now. They're not the solution. So as you wait for the solution to come, do what your gear what you want. And that's pretty much everything I have to say on this. Again, I just want to remind you, this is just a guide if you're wondering, if you're like, I need to get stronger and I don't know what to do. Hopefully this list will help you. Outside of that, I got nothing. You know, this is going to change every patch, and I'm going to do a new one every patch to see what changes as some characters go up or down, where they go. The honorable mentions now become garbage, or honorable mentions upgrade because they release something else. Things change all the time in this game. The higher they are on this list, the more likely the investment is going to be valuable over a long period of time. It's just that we gotta rate things somehow, and this is the best way I can do it. So hopefully this was helpful. Comment below, let me know if you see anything glaringly wrong with this list, or if you think there's something else that I missed. You know, let me know so I can prepare for the future. But I'm pretty confident that this represents the 50, you know, roughly, but 40 characters that you wouldn't be considered wasting your gear on if you did put stuff into them, especially if you kind of start from the top and work your way down. Have a good night, guys. Have a great day. I've been Tony Scangili, and I will catch you later.